In this video, we're going to be looking at how to control the variables within an experiment. If you remember, the main types of variables we need to control are extraneous variables, so ones that might have an effect, and confounding variables. So confounding variables are those variables that we know will impact the dependent variable. And these are both things that we've got to control. So we're going to have a look at a few of the different types of extraneous variables that we need to control within an experiment. And the experiment we're going to use is one I've already used before, the effects of music on concentration. So we've got our two types of music, rock and classical music, and our concentration task is the time to complete a word search. And all participants are going to be doing both conditions. So they're going to be doing a repeated measures design. So there's obviously going to be types of variables that are going to have an effect. We've got order effects, so they might do better in the second condition always because of learning. They might do worse in the second one because they're bored of doing word searches and they've had enough and they can't be bothered, so they don't put in as much effort. We've also got participant variables. There's going to be things like IQ that are going to have an effect on these results. People with higher IQ will generally be able to concentrate for longer. So participant variables do have an effect. General mood, your personality, your actual memory, any previous experience of doing word searches, all these participant variables will also need to be controlled. We've also got situational variables, such as time of the day. People are more alert in the morning, so that might be something that researchers need to take into account. The environment, if it's a noisy environment, they're not going to be able to concentrate as much. So if it's a hot environment, people generally will start to be less concentrated. If there's distractions around the room, people again are going to be less concentrated. So these are all sort of things we need to consider during the experiment. And also we've got investigation. And this is where the behaviour of the investigator can impact on the participants' actual behaviour. So it could be things like body language or the tone of their voice or the way they phrase a certain question or instruction that makes the participant behave in a different way than they normally would. So these are all things we've got to try and control during our experiment. So we're now going to have a look at how to control all of the different extraneous variables. So order effects, we already know what to do. We do counterbalancing. So we swap the different order that the two different groups are going to do. Or you could do an independent groups design. So where all the participants are different in both conditions. Therefore, you're not going to get order effects because they're only doing one condition each. They're not going to be able to learn from the first condition and then get better at it in the second condition because you've got two completely different groups of people. So order effects can't happen. For participant variables, random allocation is probably the best thing we can do as psychologists. Although it doesn't necessarily guarantee you that the groups are going to be completely different, or you're not going to get all high IQ in one group and low IQ in another. With random allocation, it does sort of ensure that you're going to have a completely random group of people in each of your groups. And that's really the most we can do as a psychologist. We could also do matched pairs design. So we could get both conditions into as close a condition or close sort of likeness as we possibly could. However, if the question does ask you to do repeated measures, you've got to do a repeated measures design. For situational variables, you've got to have standardized procedures and standardized instructions. So standardized procedures are every single participant will carry out step by step the same study. They'll do the exact same experiments in the exact same order. And the standardized instructions are there so that the person reading it, the experimenter reading out the instructions, reads the exact same instructions to each of the participants. So everybody is following the same order, no matter what time. It'd be time of day, the temperature of the room, their diet the day before, whatever you decide to control, every single person will follow that set standardized procedure. For investigator effects, we can do something called a double-blind design. And a double-blind design means that the participants don't know the aims of the experiment, but also the experimenter in charge will not know the aims of the experiment either. If they don't know the aims of the experiment, then they can't give any hints or they can't change their body language slightly in order to change the behaviours of the participants. So we need to control for order effects, participant variables, situational variables, and investigator effects. These are the main ones that you're going to have to try and potentially control during your exam.